So you're the first time on stage, right? Together.
Yep.
Together we are, yes.
So they did the talks before, but it was like online, right?
Yeah, mostly
And
online.
now,
Yeah, it's interesting. We've been collaborating for 3 years, and this is the second time we meet each other in person and the first time we speak together. So
So-
hopefully there's going to be more of these to come.
let's support this with a round of applause, and let's get started.
Let's go.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, how was lunch? This is the most difficult slot, I think, of any conference because
Yeah.
people come from lunch, they're relaxed, and then we tell them a lot of stuff that are gonna blow their minds. But has any one of you? I've seen there were some sweets, some desserts. I'm sure you haven't seen pancakes because we had to sacrifice a lot of pancakes to make this demo work in the CSS realm. So yeah, this is why there is none of that. My name is Natalia Venditto. I work at Microsoft. I lead the developer experience and developer tools for JavaScript, for Node.js, and the infrastructure to run those workloads. And yeah,
I'm Igor. I love working on the web, making web better, building web infrastructure. I work at Cloudflare, build a lot of cool stuff, part of the developer platform. And you might know me from my Angular days. I was here 3 years ago when I was leaving Angular because I spent 12 years building Angular. So now while I'm a big fan of Angular still, my scope has broadened and I'm thinking more about like the overall web and how to make the web better. And that's actually what aligns us and
yeah.
brings us together. Like both of us have this personal vision and mission to push the web forward and make it better in whatever way we can to make developer experience better, but also user experience, because ultimately that's what matters the most.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So when you think about progress and innovation and
pushing
making
the web
changes
forward.
and pushing the web forward, it's never a linear path. There is no linear way from A to B to get something accomplished.
Continuously getting better.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get better, sometimes we get worse. Then we forget about how we did things in the past and forget the good things from the past. And then remember like, oh, server-side rendering actually used to be cool. And that's like one of the things that we want to bring here is like server-side rendering, while we started there a long time ago, we actually bring it back. And we think that we can move more of the web frontends to a better state by doing more server-side rendering.
And sometimes we discard some technologies also, and then we find them again and use them again. So yeah.
But on the journey of the evolution, we've gone through many different rendering strategies, right?
That's right. So we have MPAs, like, give an example, Igor?
Rails, PHP, static HTML, all of those could be considered MPAs.
SPAs that we all know well.
AngularJS,
And
Backbone, Knockout, anybody? Who remembers Knockout? Big shout out to Knockout, because they were so ahead of times in many, many ways. And
Yeah.
Signals and a lot of like stuff we are doing now, looking back, like Knockout knew it long before we did.
CSR.
This is what SPAs are based on, client-side rendering. But we also have SSR.
SSR, server-side rendering, like
Just doing Angular Universal, for example, rendering things on the server side.
full stack,
Analog.js, Remix,
for example.
Quick. So many options now. There's many options on the market now.
Absolutely. And then when we are using full stack, typically meta frameworks, we have to think about new challenges like hydration, for example.
Because we don't want to give up on the interactivity.
Absolutely.
MPAs give us good rendering and first boot performance and rendering performance, but the interactivity was not so great with MPAs. But with keeping hydration or doing things like resumability. Who knows about resumability here? Few people? Okay. Well, very few. So Quick is one of the frameworks that is pushing for resumability, which is a very different approach than hydration and brings lots and lots of benefits. But that's not what this talk is about, so let's move on.
Okay.
So this is overwhelming. This is a lot of technologies, and you often are faced with challenges of like, which one should you use? What is the right one for you? And we're starting to use this WTQ, what the quack, as a theme of different talks that Natalia and I are doing together. So what the quack should I do with all of these, all my application, my client-side render application, or should I do a full stack? Because as we see, there are lots of options, and many of them come with benefits, some of them come with drawbacks, but more importantly, all of these options mean churn.
Absolutely, and they mean fatigue as well, because you have to learn a lot of stuff, you have to learn to do it right, you have to change your mental model, particularly if you are used to working client-side and now you're moving to a full-stack approach. And
But that assumes that you can actually move it all.
yeah, that assumes you can move it all, and how you do that.
Because architectural changes, when you're going from like client-side rendered application to server-side rendered application, you're making big architectural change. And it's very difficult to make these big architectural changes incrementally. They're usually non-incremental. You have to spend a lot of time migrating your application to enable server-side rendering, or go from SPA to full stack. And in some cases, you can do it.
Yeah, just from scratch. If you're working on something small and contained, then you can make all your choices. You can go for the latest and greatest. But if you are, and many of us and many of you, I expect, are working in enterprise, how many of you are working in enterprise applications right now? Think about moving your front-end workloads, migrating them to other technologies. It's not only what you're going to be doing that is running in the browser, is what you're going to be doing that is running then remotely. So it's a big shift, right?
How many of you were fortunate enough to be able to decide the architectural design of an enterprise application? Okay, so before we had about half of the room was enterprise developers, and I see only like 10 hands lifted, raised, because the honest truth is that often you just end up working on an application that was designed by somebody else, often 5, 7 years ago, and you have no choice just but stick with those big decisions that were made a long time ago. And at the time, those were the right decisions to make. The architecture was the state of art, but in the last 5 years, things have changed so much that you would want to use something else, but you just can't because you're stuck with the architectural decisions of the past teams or past you, and the application is too big, too critical, it's too expensive to move it.
Absolutely. And big bang migrations are undesirable. I don't know if you've ever participated of one. I have, and they typically don't go right. And
always over time, over budget.
yes, and
very
also
stressful.
it's more like unfeasible to put parts of the application or features out of service because you want to try them in a different way, and that's what ends up happening, and enterprises cannot afford that. So how do we move forward?
Because we do need to move forward. We cannot be stuck with choices we made 5 years ago. And we really need mobility. We need web infrastructure mobility, ability to change platforms, to change frameworks, to change tools, and do it with low risk, and just make it feasible. And we really need this to be incremental.
Yeah, incremental, low risk, obviously, high
High
return
on investment, so that you can talk to your business partners and say, we want to upgrade our application. We're going to spend 1 week, 1 month on it, not years, not quarters, but days or weeks. And we're going to show you results, both in terms of increased productivity and in terms of better user experience, which will usually result in better business value, higher conversion rate, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think that now more than ever, we need to be able to operate in the same way across platforms and across providers and infrastructure, different types of infrastructures. So this is another big requirement in order to migrate today.
So what if
we could slowly, incrementally break apart a UI Think about the one you're working on right now.
Big enterprise application, nightmare to touch, very fragile, takes forever to build. You know, like the one you're working on every day.
Day in, day out. And we could migrate each part individually, in isolation, truly independently.
By carving out parts of the UI. Just like, you know, imagine your UI of the application, just you draw a rectangle and say, this part is going to be a new stack, and it's going to be deployed independently.
And it's not going to break anything. And then
And it's not going to affect the old application.
Yeah.
It's not going to break it. It's going to be smooth and very easy to bring in.
So we can do it, I think.
We can do it.
How do we
And
do it?
we want to introduce you to technology that does that. Drum beats? Okay, let's introduce iframe.
Yay!
How many people know iframes?
Everyone.
Everybody knows it. How many of you love iframes? What's wrong with you?
Well, iframes have a lot of benefits.
Okay.
They're composable. Yeah, they provide a great level or high level of encapsulation. Yes, and they are platform and tooling agnostic, and they have been around for a very long time, so everybody knows them, right? But yeah,
Yeah, they're the original gangster of micro-frontend technology.
yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, we're just kidding. This is not talk about iframes, because iframes do have lots of drawbacks. And they come down to design constraints where you have clipping of the UI. So for example, if you want to show model dialog or full page overlay, you just can't do that with iframe. There are usability issues. For example, history management is a mess. Back button in the browser rarely works unless you do special tricks. It's a nightmare. There are accessibility issues. If you have a screen reader has to understand that it's iframe and dig into it. Not great user experience for people that need screen readers. And there are also performance issues because iframes cannot render anything until the iframe itself is rendered. And if you have client-side rendered application, then you need to first bootstrap your client-side rendered application. That renders iframe, and then iframe finally makes a request to fetch maybe server-side rendered application. Works, but it's slow.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what if there was a tech that brought the best or the benefits of iframe, but not their drawbacks?
Okay. Introducing, not for real, Web Fragments. So
Yeah.
there's this technology that we've been collaborating on for some time called Web Fragments. It's a relatively new technology. We haven't talked about it publicly much, but as you'll see, it's used in production already. We have real-world use cases of it, and we think it's very exciting, and more people should know about it. And this is why we started to do this kind of conference talks, to bring awareness and solicit feedback, because we want to hear from you how to make this technology work for you. Because ultimately, what our goal is to enable mobility, enable people to upgrade and migrate their applications incrementally to better stack to improve the web. So let's talk about what these web fragments are. And to do that, we built an application, an Angular application.
Yeah, it's a monolith Angular application. It's a it's a prototype, of course, but it's an e-commerce application that you may recognize. Catalog, shopping cart, you have a detail page. The
And
usual.
we can add things to cart, and we can proceed to checkout if you want to. This application is very simple. We actually injected 2-second pause before the bootstrap just to simulate the enterprise experience. But this is application that we're starting with. It's a monolithic application. Everything is single code base. I think it's Angular 18, I believe.
Yep.
And it's just built and hosted on static asset provider like Cloudflare or Azure. And what we want to do is we want to take this application and we're going to break it down into parts. So there are 2 logical parts, actually 3. There's the legacy application, and then we have the product catalog that shows these products with product details, so 2 routes in like 1 logical part. And then we have this shopping cart component, which seems somewhat isolated. So in order to get a buy-in from a business owners or business partners, we could make a pitch that what if we could render this product list much faster and not have to wait for those 2 seconds by migrating the product catalog and product details over to Web Fragment, basically the iframe approach. So basically carve out this part and move it and rebuild it as a new application.
That's
and
right.
that's what we've done.
So
How is this fragment built, Natalia?
well, this fragment is built with analog. So basically, we just recreated the Angular architecture, but we're now rendering server-side rendering with analog.
Analog. How many people know Analog? 1/3 of the room. Analog is a full-stack solution for Angular. Shout out to Brandon Roberts, who's working on it. It's the best full-stack experience you have with Angular today, and that's why we're using it. So Analog gives you faster rendering, gives you data loading, a lot of support to build full-stack applications while still using Angular.
Absolutely. It's very intuitive. You have a change in the router, which is file-based, but it's basically a motion forward, pretty straightforward.
And this application is pure Analog. There are very few minor things that we had to do to make it work with Web Fragments. We're not going to go into those details in this talk, but it's really just like about the route. The routes need to be namespaced, and assets need to be namespaced. That's all. That's all the requirements we have. Everything else is vanilla Analog. And then we took the shopping cart.
And we built it with Quick. So
just
now,
because we wanted to experiment with Quick and we wanted to show you that you can actually compose an client-side rendered Angular application with server-side rendered Analog application and server-side rendered Quick application, all in one unified experience.
Can you maybe show the monorepo where we're working on this, so they can see that they are effectively different applications? And also, do we have the
let me
diagram?
actually show the code.
Yeah.
Here.
Do we have the diagram? Did you?
I don't have the, no, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. Okay, so if you see over there in the monolithic app in the packages, that's the original Angular application. And then what we have in the polyolithic folder, then we have the quick shopping cart, the analog product catalog, and then you will see that we have a shell and we also have a server because we are using middleware in this case.
Yeah, so the only requirement for the legacy application is that you host it with a middleware that Web Fragments control. It's a drop-in middleware. We built one for this demo in Express, but there's also Cloudflare Pages adapter. We have a Netlify adapter, soon Azure adapter.
Yeah.
So this is really like very drop-in replacement and should work with any of the legacy applications you might have today.
Exactly. Okay, so back to
So the cool thing about this, like these are actually like fully interactive applications, so you can click on them. The CSS is a little messed up because it's not in the container, but it's fully interactive, and even the shopping cart, you can see that it updates. Cool. So what does it look like once we compose it all together? So we have this application where, let me show you the seam. Let me actually
go back to 100. I think you zoomed in a little bit.
Sorry? Go back where?
You had zoomed in, or maybe not.
That's okay. So I just want to show you this part. So we added this toggle so that we see the seams, and the seams just show you where the fragments are, and you can think that these are iframes, but they're not really iframes, because if we look in the inspector and look into DOM, what we'll see is that there is one unified DOM rendered by the client-side rendered application that contains these custom elements, fragment outlet and fragment host, that contain a shadow root, which contains additional DOM. And we have two of these fragment hosts, one for the shopping cart application and one for this one.
The catalog, yeah.
Yeah, catalog.
And as you can see, they are inside of a shadow root, which allows us to fully encapsulate styles. and not interact or pollute the DOM with additional styles.
So this is, you don't have to worry about breaking the whole application because the styles are separate. And in a similar way, we talked about iframes having the great property of encapsulation of not just CSS or style sheets, but also JavaScript.
Exactly.
And if we look into console, what we'll see is that we actually have several frames that we can navigate to. We have a card frame, which I can, let me pull this up.
Maybe zoom in a bit. Bigger.
Okay.
Yep.
And I should be able to do, yeah, quick events. So this is a frame in which the card runs, and it has like some quick specific global variables. I can switch over to catalog, and in here, quick events is not found, but we'll have zone because it's an analog application which is zone.js and some other globals. But the important part here is that each fragment has its own JavaScript context. So all the code is loaded into this separate JavaScript context when the fragment is created. And when you no longer need the fragment, if I navigate away, which I should be able to do, and look at this, then the JavaScript contexts are gone. And this has a lot of benefits. One of them is that if you have these massive applications, you often end up loading a lot of code that you cannot unload unless you're doing something like this. So you have first time ever ability to unload code, not just load code. You have ability to release memory leaks. How many times have you seen a big application that was leaking memory left and right? Every single one is. But here you can at least encapsulate the modules and you can say like, oh, if this module is not active anymore, if there was a memory leak inside of it, it's gone. If somebody forgot to unregister set interval and the module is deactivated, the set interval is deactivated as well. Everything is gone. And this really allows you to not only migrate the application, but actually scale the application and structure it such that each team is in charge of their own destiny and is in control of their own fate.
Absolutely. So that prevents what Igor has described many times as fate sharing, which is how potentially micro-frontends interact with each other in an unexpected way or share their bad fate with the rest of the UI.
So one cool thing about the fragments is that just like iframes, you can drop them anywhere. You just point them at the endpoint and say like, oh, load the cart component here and display it. So in this case, we just created the standalone route just to show you that the same shopping cart component can be used here. And we added this button that just sends a message to add an item into the cart. So we can interact with it, even in this embedded mode. But more interestingly, and this is a question we get all the time, how do the fragments communicate with each other?
And we're using the web platform, right? We're using broadcast channel, and we are posting a message that anyone can subscribe to.
So notice that I'm in two different fragments, and I added item. Let me remove this. I'm in one fragment, we're adding card, we're using broadcast channel API, browser API to send a message. And the other fragment is listening on that broadcast channel and receives a message, and that's how the shopping cart is updated. So you can truly have components that are independent. You just need to agree on the messaging protocol, and so you can send messages between them.
So far, the CSS is encapsulated, the JavaScript is encapsulated in its own context, and the multiple fragments can communicate seamlessly using web platform APIs, which is
also
future-proof, right?
Notice that we have a URL that is changing as we navigate inside of the analog application, because the analog application is a special kind of fragment that is routable. So it actually listens to all of the location changes. And if I hit the back button, the location updates the way you would expect it, but also the analog application sees that it's updated and just works the way it would normally. In fact, we have two routers working here that are nested. We have the legacy router that only listens to, in this case, up to store, and everything after store is delegated to the nested analog router. And those routers don't know about each other completely. They don't know it's completely encapsulated and isolated from each other.
Cool.
Should we talk about the extra feature about?
Piercing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
So let's see if it works. This is the one that we had the most trouble. So this demo was built just for this conference, and it's still not. I'm going to show you a production application using this, but let's see if it works. So the normal experience in the shell application is something like this: 2 seconds of nothingness, and then it shows up. With Web Fragments, you can say, oh, this Web Fragments is actually, this product catalog is actually server-side rendered, so how about we show it as soon as we have it? We don't have to wait for the legacy application to bootstrap. So if I reload, a little bit off, okay. It jumps just a little.
Yeah, that was our struggle. Not enough pancakes.
not even
Died.
sacrificing pancakes would allow us to get rid of the CLS issue. But I'll show you, this is completely solvable, and we don't have CLS issues in production. But the point is that we can show you this fragment before the legacy application is bootstrapped. And not only we can show it to you, that application is actually fully hydrated, and you can even interact with it, so I can navigate. It's going to be even more broken. So I can reload the page. I can click, and
maybe throttle it. Are you throttling to 3G?
It's fine.
Okay.
So the application is fully interactive. I can click on it. It actually navigates, updates the URL, while the legacy application is still starting. And this is really cool because that means that you can take the most valuable part of the UI, migrate it to modern technology, and then use Web Fragments to actually show it to the user very quickly. So if you are trying to improve LCP and have the largest contentful paint happen very quickly, you don't need to be constrained by the bootstrap time of your legacy application. You can do it very quickly with Web Fragments. I'm going to quickly show you what it looks like in production. So this is Cloudflare Dash, which we are migrating using Web Fragments from client-side React application to a combination of Quick and Remix. So we're building roughly, I estimate we're going to about 100 fragments by the time we are done. It's a big, massive application. The entire company contributes to it, and it's a very messy and fragile application because it has years and years of history. There are parts that nobody knows. Everything, it's very difficult to do upgrades like React upgrades and whatnot. So we're just basically carving out parts of the UI, and in this case, this part of the UI was carved out and rebuilt as a separate fragment. We added this fake shell around it, just like visually it roughly looks the same, and as we're developing it, we see the proportions. But interestingly, like this is fully interactive application. It doesn't do much. This is the simplest fragment we have, but it's one that is in production. And this is what it looks like in the embedded mode. And if I do hard reload, you see it shows very quickly. We had to add this skeleton on the side to just show like something's going to come, and we are waiting for the legacy application to start. And once it started, we showed the menu there. But this is how we're able to take a very massive business-critical legacy application that we have, client-side rendered, takes forever to load and render, and use Web Fragments to migrate it incrementally. And one thing that I mentioned that you cannot do with iframes is if you have something like this model dialog, then if this was built with iframes, you could never have this overlay. I don't know if it's visible enough.
Yeah, it is.
You can never have the dialog go into the part of the screen that is built, rendered by the legacy application. So you really have the full fidelity of building applications, building UIs in whatever way you want. Cool. Go back to. Let's do a quick recap. Questions? 5 minutes. Okay. We have 5-minute warning. Okay. Thank you.
Incremental. Yeah,
we
check.
need incremental. There is
Yeah.
no way we can do enterprise migrations that are non-incremental. So incremental is a must-have.
Low risk. We have seen that we have encapsulated assets, code, JavaScript
Minimal changes to
execution.
legacy application. Really just drop in a gateway and install two custom elements. Nothing else is needed in the legacy application.
High return on investment. Well, we have an independent team that is just solely focused on bringing innovation into the platform, while the other operations go on as usual, right?
And you can also take the most valuable parts of the UI and migrate those first, and it's your choice, and deliver business results.
Absolutely. And then, as we could see, is platform and tooling agnostic. We can use any framework. We can deploy to any vendor, to any infrastructure, and it's going to run exactly the same. So, yeah.
Best of all, the solution is open source. It's on GitHub. We're developing it on GitHub. And it's surprisingly small. It's about 3,000 source lines of code. So you can spend like one afternoon reading through all the source code. It's not the most trivial source code to read. We are adding documentation and improving it, but it's not a whole lot of code. It's not a ton of complexity. There are some smart tricks that we're using. We're using some of the browser APIs in ways that they were not used before, which is exciting for me, but also a little worrisome because platform changes. And this is why we are working with standard bodies to actually take parts of Web Fragments and turn them into platform specs, because there are some APIs that we could benefit from, and right now we are kind of working around the platform. So if we could push those into the platform and get some more additional DOM APIs, then Web Fragments could be maybe half the size or even less.
Yeah, this demo is also fully available, and we're going to be publishing a full website with documentation and rationale and architecture diagrams that you can use to build.
We've developed this at Cloudflare, but this is really like fourth generation that I built of this solution, and the first generation of solution that is in production. We have contributions from Microsoft, Netlify, Block, and others are contributing. So when I show this to enterprise customers, they get super excited because they're like, this actually solves my problems and checks all the checkboxes. So people are very curious and are trying it out. We do solve the problem of migrations, but also scalability, and this is why it's very interesting in the enterprise. As I mentioned, it's in production. Cloudflare, the demo I showed you with Cloudflare Dash, that's a production application. We're working on beta, and we are in beta and working towards 1.0. And we are looking for some early adopters. So if this tech is interesting to you, please come talk to us. Natalia and I would love to hear from you and just understand your needs and see if we match those today.
Yeah, let us know. So we have enabled mobility, right?
Well, my hope is that this technology will enable mobility on the market, will make it possible for us to see what is really the best solution on the market today and start using it without fears of being held back by decisions we made, architectural decisions we made a long time ago. And with that, improve the enterprise front ends and push the web forward.
Yeah, that's all.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.